Blog Talk Radio.
All Pro Media Group Radio showcases professionals on a daily basis. Be inspired and listen to experts from around the globe share their accomplishments with you. APMG Radio, success at its finest. You're listening to APMG Radio, and this is episode 1 of Technology Revealed, an audio blog with Dr. Halliday. Dr. Halliday, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Great to have you on this show. So tell us a little bit about what we'll be discussing on this season.
What I had in mind was looking at some of the aspects of personal technology, in particular those things which deal with our daily lives. I wanted to update some audio sessions that we have previously and look at some new areas of discussion and expand some of the discussion points relative to personal experiences that I've had with technology issues. And hopefully we'll be able to see audio replays on my website, henryhalliday.com. And you can always email questions, issues, or further considerations to henryhalliday@earthlink.net, which is my email address. So we're going to sort of go slowly at first to look at what's in our daily lives for technology.
Brilliant. I know we've got a lot to cover over this series. So let me ask you, let's start from what's happening right now. How much impact is technology having on our personal lives in today's society?
Well, I guess if you look at what could impact it, it's huge. If we look at what we're going to pay attention to, it may not be quite so insurmountable. But that's part of the issue. We're facing a lot of issues. We're looking at changes that almost are occurring on a daily basis, and it sometimes is very overwhelming, and we have to sometimes be selective, but certainly not afraid to embrace those changes that are in front of us.
What issues are we facing? What are some of the issues that you're seeing when it comes to technology? Because technology is such a wonderful thing, but it does seem to be changing and evolving at such a fast pace, like you said, that it can be very overwhelming for us all.
Yeah, we sort of, it's a real tough question to say, how far do I go? What do I want to do? I think that it's important to embrace the fact that changes are taking place. We have to realize that some are going to be important to us, some are not. We have to do sort of our own filtering, but at the same time, take those areas that you're comfortable with and work outwards from that to expand your knowledge and your interest.
What are some of the technologies that you see that you think are extremely beneficial and that you have seen have a lot of good influence over us?
Well, we'll go into that a little bit. We have our further discussions in terms of those things which are directly influenced to our lives today, credit, shopping, entertainment, our key areas that we're all influencing with, but obviously our cars, our vehicles in general, and how we support security in our home and elsewhere.
How do you see it all changing in the future? I know this will be something that we cover on maybe a later episode, but just to get an outline of this, what do you see taking place? Let's pick cars, for example. How do you see them progressing in the future?
Well, it depends on who you want to look at. If you want to look at what the car manufacturers want to do, there's going to be significant changes in those. Political and safety and legal issues may curtail that a bit, but we're going to see smart cars, much smarter than they are today, taking over more of our transportation issues in general, I believe.
Now, I know a lot of us are focused on the environment. We want to try and do our best when it comes to the environment. So, for example, as we're talking about green cars, a lot of us are considering hybrids now. let's now focus on something that you've had experience with, which is solar array installation. Tell us a little bit about this and what it is.
Well, obviously, from a green environment and also from an economic standpoint, it makes sense to try and take advantage of energy that's there all the time, which is not there, but during the day, for instance, or many hours in different locations. And it does help decrease the amount of greenhouse gases that are being emitted by the fact that we're burning coal, we're using other energy that impacts our environment, and solar energy is now getting to the point where it's economical enough to be considered for the home. And I think I'll go into that a little bit and exactly the details that you want to look at if you have that in mind.
And what made you decide to incorporate this into your own home?
Because, one, the economics are a lot more reasonable today. The technology's had some time to mature. Mm-hmm. The structure of the power companies is now recognizing this is influential, so they offer incentives. So there's incentives economically to go ahead. There's a practical aspect that it decreases your demand, the home's demand, and also saves money in the long term.
Tell us a little bit about the process. How did you go about finding the right vendor to install this?
Well, that's part of my engineering background is that it's always important for a major expenditure to look for contractors who are in the business and give them a chance to respond to your need and see what their expertise is, both engineering and economically, to understand all the factors involved that impact a house. I won't go into the details at this point, but we'll go into it a little later in terms of all the structural, electronic, electrical impacts in addition to the service and longevity of this sort of thing. It's not like you trade it in every year like you might do with a car.
Do you think that everybody, all homes are suited to this new technology, or are there particular homes that this would work better in?
Well, I think that the fact that you need to have the sun viewed from the roof of your home is a key. But initially, I had a lot of concern, and others have had, that if we're in the northern latitudes, like where Seattle, that I'm living in, that there's a lot of clouds and you don't get as much sun. But it's not true that just because you have clouds, you don't get any help from the sun. And this technology has got to the point where it's still economically feasible to have, even in the North countries. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later.
I know we're going to go more into the installation process of what you experienced when you chose this technology. What are some other technologies that we can incorporate into the home that are beneficial when it comes to being economical and also environmentally friendly? Are there anything that you can think of off the top of your head?
Well, yeah, the other thing I've implemented is a video security system within the home to give me some sense of what's going on if I'm not there, also from a protection standpoint. I think that we're also seeing that the means of employing sensors in the home to know what's going on and control lighting, sensing of carbon monoxide and smoke is important. We'll talk about that later. And also from the human body standpoint, I've been involved with measuring what's happening in the human body from a dietary standpoint, from a physical standpoint, through body composition measurements, and interface with the Internet.
I know that there are so many things out there and so many ways in which we can improve our lifestyle as we incorporate these technologies. You had spoken earlier about the maturity of specific technologies. I think we were talking about the sort of solar installation, and you had said, that it has had time to mature. When a new technology comes out, what advice do you have for people in order to kind of track how it develops? Because a lot of the time when something comes out on the market, it does take time. There are tweaks, there are things that will need to take place with a product before it actually reaches that perfect level. So what advice do you have for a customer?
Oh, well, I think it used to be the only way we get information is with newspapers and magazines. But the Internet has changed the availability of information on, one, what are the manufacturers doing? Two, what are the personal responses? People are now blogging, just like talk radio. Mm-hmm. They're also communicating versus the other Twitter and Facebook and so forth. And so it's important to do a little bit of filtering. You can do searches on the web, which are very effective. And it's also important to look what's in the written magazine sometimes. They can have you more help. So if you're interested in a particular technology, do a little bit of searching before you jump into it. See what other people. There are always those people who will do the first of anything that comes out. and take risk. There is certainly risk. And there's also not just risk technically, but also financially. But so if you get some of the first experiences out there, it may give you to drive to more interest and more searching to find out what's really available and what's it going to cost before you really jump in, wholeheartedly.
We've been talking about technology within our daily lives, and I think this is something that has come up recently. At what stage do we go past the kind of line where it's great to have this technology, but now we're starting to invade on privacy because everything is so accessible? What would you say to that?
I'd say it's important to keep track of, one, what the issues are, especially with respect to privacy, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I think it's also important to, if you have feelings with respect to privacy, is to make those known to your leaders, both locally and nationally, on what your feelings are. So it's important to see that our laws and the government has a good understanding, or at least should have a good understanding of those things that are driving us and not just someone else. It's always going to be a ticklish boundary between privacy and protection from people who would do us harm outside the country, but also from within it. So it's a delicate balance, and I don't think there's a single answer. We just need to keep active.
Let's take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to continue discussing technology within our daily lives. I'm Lucy, and my guest today is Dr. Henry Halliday. We'll be back straight after the commercial break.
Hey, Kate, how's things with the new business?
Oh, hey, John. Thanks for asking. It's going really well. Hang on a minute. I just got to retweet something a new client just said.
I just don't understand how you have so many followers, not to mention the likes on your Facebook page.
And I can't even get over the hits on my website, too. Everything's going great, but I'll tell you something, John. I'm not doing it alone. You want to know the answer?
Of course I do. I want a successful business like yours.
All Pro Media Group.
Huh?
It's a full-service marketing and PR company that assists businesses of all sizes. Basically, what they do is transform your business into a brand through their marketing and network connections. John, imagine having a personal campaign designed just for you and then being able to reach hundreds of thousands of potential clients and business professionals worldwide. Just go to allpromediagroup.com for more information, and you could be reaching the next level of success too.
Kate, you're the best.
No, I'm not. All Pro Media Group is.
ATS Computers. They're a full-service technology company open since 1994, servicing commercial and residential clients. They strive on their reputation with the community. Their website is www.atscomptech.com, and their number is 631-474-4674. Where can you buy unique and beautiful gifts that will be remembered forever? Or can you buy the friend who has everything? Well, it's simple, and it's only a click away. Just go to rageandeden.co.uk for a selection of worldwide Gothic and fantasy art from world-leading artists. Choose from the exquisite figurines, chic jewelry, amazing prints, or even one of the trendy t-shirts that are bound to make a statement wherever you go, even if it is just to the local supermarket. Visit rageandeden.co.uk. Every garden has a corner in the shade.
$855-451-MOVE.com. Their name is their number, 855-451-MOVE. They are a full-service local and long-distance moving company based out of Suffolk County, New York. Their number is their name. They hold an A+ with the BBB and have been open for over 5 years. Their website is www.855-451-MOVE.com.
ATS Computers. They're a full-service technology company open since 1994, servicing commercial and residential clients. They strive on their reputation with the community. Their website is www.atscomptech.com, and their number is 631-474-4674.
You're listening to APMG Radio, and we're very, very excited to have Dr. Henry Halliday with us today. We were talking about Technology Revealed, an audio blog with him. So we've been talking about technology within our daily lives. And Henry, we spoke earlier about the solar array system installation. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay, well, I've been watching what's been happening with solar panels, solar arrays for some time, initially driven by the fact I worked with a company that had satellites that used solar arrays in space where there wasn't any way to get hydroelectric or other power. So I've been watching the state of the art, and it was getting to the point where enough trials had been underway for commercial applications that I decided that it was time to get some additional detail to try and say whether or not it was worthwhile for me to try a major investment in my home. The first thing I did was to identify 3 potential vendors in this state to get recommendations, is it going to work for me, and to get the estimates of what it would cost and what the payback was. Actually, I got 3 responses and 1 which did not call back. 2 actually came out, but only 1 had the best thorough approach, plus offered digital home energy monitoring. I have always been interested in knowing how much I'm using in the home and where's it going, not specific to identify a particular appliance, but I'll mention that I do have a hot tub which is electrically powered, and I wanted to know, is it working correctly? The vendor I selected did an on-site survey, actually went up on the roof and mapped where the sun was going to be blocked, how much view I'd have, and whether this home location was adequate for enough solar energy to provide a reasonable return on investment. This is very useful. They actually could use Google Maps to find my home, to do a preliminary survey of the surroundings of the homes to make sure there was not blockage. But actually, when they went up on the roof, they had a device that allows them to determine how much sun I'm going to be seeing during the day, which is part of the equation to determine the economic return of putting solar arrays on the roof. They also measured the roof to see how many panels I could have. The items which became not totally apparent to me was that the in-state solar panel manufacturers get a tax advantage, and that's offered some incentives to persons such as myself in terms of what's it going to cost. There are also some tax breaks that are currently being offered by various states and by the federal government. The federal government gives a tax allowance on your income up to, currently it's 30% for the expense of having a solar array installed. It's also possible to have part of the array providing hot water. In my case, I decided, don't need to do that because I'm using gas, which is already essentially a third of the cost of electric heating. So I decided that isn't necessary. But I did want to have net metering. What that means is that the excess solar energy that's output during the year is provided back to the power company, and you get credit for that. Obviously, depending on where you live and how much sun you get, does determine how much you can provide back to the power company. But more places are going to see that as important as our rivers become unable to service the dams and get by with the wildlife or even have enough water to provide all the power we're going to need. So we're going to need more power in the future than we do right today. So part of the economic matrix that was provided by the company is what's it going to cost initially, what kind of return could you expect from these incentives and rebates, if you will, and how many years is it going to take to give back your money if you decide to go with something which is not optimal. So this is all a big important factor that's taken place over the years, and what is it worth to the consumer to take advantage of solar power. Other key attributes, they've learned that they can have a solar panel which has a 25-year life to it to provide the rated output power, and that the electric interface between the solar panels, which output DC power, to interface with the electric grid, which is 240-volt power, AC, is on the order of a 10-year warranty period. So what you want to look at is how long is this stuff going to last before it starts to have failures to it versus am I going to be in a home for that length of time and get the money back? Obviously, if you sell the home, the people who are going to be buying it have the advantage of that system. So it doesn't just go away. So we had a lot of discussion with respect to the details of the installation. I was particularly concerned about making holes in the roof. I didn't need to have water leaking in, so I wanted to talk to the installer to find out exactly what was going to be done and the details. Had he done it before? Part of this says if you want to wait with technology, it'd be nice to see someone else experiment, especially with respect to the home. There's a lot of things different if you add some attachment to your car as opposed to something major like this which goes up in your house. We did go ahead with I decided then after going through the details and the particulars of the electronics, we did have them undertake the installation. Installation was in a couple parts. First, they had to install the frame and make sure that it was sealed well to the roof. They did even wind loading to make sure that if we have heavy winds, that it would not be damaged. This is important for those areas of the country where you may have very heavy winds like tornadoes. You want to make sure that it's well attached to your house. There's no guarantee it's going to withstand a level 3 or 5 tornado, but it certainly is going to withstand normal winds expected for the area. Installation took a couple days for the framing and sealing, and another day or two for the panels, electronics, and wiring. The actual operation, they were able to do initial turn-on, but they had to wait for the city to come out and do the approval, and that took about a week to get them out. We also had to install a special net meter, which is the electronic version the power company does to monitor how much goes in versus how much goes back of the power to the power system itself. The additional feature that I talked about, it was monitoring of whole power usage myself, and that's done through a interface with the power lines that provides a PC interface that you can see how much energy you're using versus time of day. So you can see how many hours it works, what it's not doing, is it behaving correctly. And this is important at least for those people who are interested in what's going on, but it also helps you bookkeep whether the power company is giving you the amount of money back when it comes to the year end, because it keeps track of that at a local level, not just what the power company says. And I've found over this 1 year I've had it that it's within just a few percent of being in agreement with what they said. Part of that has to do with even find out what time of day do they give you the credit. Overall, I've been pretty satisfied with the experience. We've had a couple minor glitches. One was a failure, one of the power converters, which was handled under warranty. The second was that we lost one of the fuses in it because water dripped through from a seal that wasn't totally complete on the roof. Both of these which were fixed within a day and got the system back up and running. What I have found is that solar productivity varies from about 15 hours in the summer to about 7 hours in the winter, not including when we have typical fog or heavy clouds. But that's about an average. Most cloudy days is expected to reduce the productivity, but it doesn't go away. You may get 10 to 25% instead of 100%. The estimates of the solar production have been very good. It's been a fraction of a percent over which they thought I was going to get, and that's going to vary a little year by year. Right now we've been driven by a lot of dry but foggy days here in the in the Northwest. Rain obviously is an impact, but it's taken into account when they estimate how much you're going to, based on your actual geographic position, what I think is important in estimating what's going to take. Knowing where the energy is useful, where it's going. I can watch my hot tub when it turns on and turn off, and I guess how much that's costing me a month. And I love supplying power back to the power company. That's always fun.
There seems to be a lot of advantages there, and it's great to have you on the show knowing that you've experienced this, you've gone through this process, so you know what questions to ask. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the listeners with when it comes to this technology and deciding whether it's right for them?
I think that if you have any interest at all in reducing our energy load and are interested in economically does it make sense, is to see if there's at least 2 or 3 companies in your state that do installation and get involved with them to see does it make sense for you. A lot of homes in the Midwest, for instance, that have very few trees will have an advantage that you don't have to worry about a view factor. But I think that read some more on the internet on what's and check in your area. These guys are always willing to talk to you, but remember they're sales. But you need to get enough detail so that economically it makes sense. In addition to ecology-wise. Brilliant.
Well, Henry, it's been great having you on the show. What can the listeners expect on our next episode together?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about personal technology. As you mentioned earlier, we've got to talk about transportation, home security. I've got some experience working with home video cameras and the Internet that I'd like to relate. We also have status of our homes. I'd like to talk a little bit more about security, status and control, what's going on, including some security and sensing devices in the house. And we're going to talk later on about some material technology, some medical technology, and also what's going on in science before we sort of do a review of those things we'll be talking about over this next several weeks.
Brilliant. And how can people contact you and listen to this show if they were missed the live version?
Okay, they can go to my website, which is henryhalliday.com, or if they want, they can also look on Blog Talk Radio. I believe the episodes are there. And if they have any questions, they can email me at henryhalliday@earthlink.net.
Brilliant. Well, Henry, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to APMG Radio with my special guest, Dr. Henry Halliday. This show and many others can be found at allpromediagroup.com. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Lucy, and you've been listening to APMG Radio.
All Pro Media Group Radio showcases professionals on a daily basis. Be inspired and listen to experts from around the globe share their accomplishments with you. APMG Radio, success at its finest.